The Huckleberry Queen is back with her shades on, fingers in the air, ready to do work. She also brought me a big jar of pickled eggs. If you're new here, a valued member of my team was fired. Unjustly, I believe. And the judicial system, thank God, put a check on that. And she's back. She can be fired like the rest of us. Anyways, I wanted to make this video perched on the side of a mountain, being picturesque, but it calls to me today. So, I've been dibble-dabbling in Buddhism, and it's been something that's been immensely healing for me. So, I want to share with you what I've learned. Well, here we go. The first thing that I love about Buddhism, okay, is the concept that suffering is inevitable. And you might be wondering, why is that good? And I like that for this reason, because I think that, like, society as a whole, we are pushed to hide our suffering from each other. And in turn, it hides it from ourselves. Right? Like, we're told you shouldn't be a sad person, you shouldn't be angry, you shouldn't be depressed, you shouldn't be anxious. All of the things that suffering is, right? Suffering is just broadly bleh of life. Okay, and society tells you to hide that, and we hide that from each other, and then we hide it from ourselves. And that's not good for you. And the Buddha's like, yeah, man, it's just gonna be there, okay? And that's relieving to me. I like to think of it as, like, this is a weird tree analogy, like walking through the woods. You know, that tree over there, that's your anger. That one over there's your sadness or whatever. And, like, you could chop that bitch down, but there's a tree right next to it. And then one's gonna pop up right there because we live in life. It's gonna keep growing, but what the Buddha asks you to do, I think, is to just recognize, like, hey, it's there. You know, perhaps go sit by it for a little bit. Observe what it is that is there. But then get up and keep wandering through the forest. That's kind of how I view it. And that to me is relieving, okay? That suffering will just be there, but we can just let it exist. We don't have to really necessarily remove it, but you can meander around it. So, thing I like about Buddhism, number 1. The next thing I've learned about Buddhism is the 4 Noble Truths. The first Noble Truth is dukkha, and that is the suffering that I mentioned previous. You know, the unsavory bits of being a human, the bleh. And it's inevitable. There was a monk on YouTube, I'll try and put the link below, that described dukkha as ill living. And I really like that, because it puts some level of accountability to it, right? Like, suffering is inevitable, but on some level, you know, it is the result of us ill living. I like that. Anyways, the second noble truth is Trishna. And Trishna is the root cause of all dukkha. Trishna is the source of our suffering. And it's described as like a lust or desire for things to be not as they are. Right? You bought the new thing and you are slowly watching it deteriorate, and that brings some anxiety or anger or unrest. Or maybe your buddy got the new thing and now you don't have the new thing anymore. Or it can be as simple as, you know, looking at baby pictures of your kids and realizing that they'll never be babies again. Not here. Okay? And that's a sort of suffering there, right? The desire for things to be not as they are. That is Trishna. And I have found that looking at the suffering that I feel from that lens, from that perspective, has been really insightful. Like, you have this level of upset or whatever. Try to look at it through the lens of, like, what do you actually want to be different? Does it actually need to be different? Start asking yourselves this question. Anyways, third noble truth is nirvana. And nirvana is described as a blissful state free of Trishna. Not necessarily to rid yourself of the Trishna. I think that's important though. There was a monk, described it as well living, and I like that because I think that when we think of a blissful state that's like heaven-like, and it seems sort of unattainable, but this monk was like, nah, that it's a state of being, from well living. So it's totally doable, right? I like that. Okay, and then the fourth noble truth is the path. The eightfold path, the eight noble path, I'm not sure. There's 8 and it's a path, so. And the fourth noble truth, the path, is, how you place yourself in that well-living category, right? And that's where I find myself now, is going through all of the 8 things, just kind of thinking about what they mean to me and like working through them from wherever I am. I might make a video about that, I don't know, we'll see. But it has been really good for me. I'll share with you one. The first, let's see if I can find it. The first thing on the Noble Eightfold path here is right view, and I wrote down know the truth. And I've been pondering that because I find that interesting. What is the truth? Because there is something just so potent about this. Okay, where am I going? What I have learned in the last couple years is that the truth is relative. That 2 people can go through an experience together, and what is the truth for one can be completely different than what is the truth from the other. And both truths are actually valid because it was experienced by the person. So what is the truth? And I think that calls to this idea of knowing your own personal truth. Like, what is your code of conduct? Like, for me, it is being truthful. Sometimes that comes out around to bite me in the ass. I'm learning you can say nothing. For me, it's truth. It's like having integrity, making sure I'm doing the right thing. And then beyond that, what is my truth is, like, love. I'm back on my love bullshit. Okay, it's this. Love is what unites all beings through space and time. And not even just humans. My wiener dog loves me, and I love him. Okay? So, the first thing on the Noble Eightfold path is right view. Know the truth. And I want to orient the rest of what I do, the rest of the 7 things, towards, like, moving from a space of love and my own personal truth. That's it. That's where I'm at. So, I hope you find that useful. One more thing on the right view thing. I also think that kind of gets at, how we choose to frame our reality, right? I did a video on thought and like how you can kind of like frame your own perception in a way that is positive, and I think that's part of it. Instead of waking up and feeling like you hate your job, look at it as, here's my opportunity to get out there and do something, right? Kind of shifting how you view what you're doing in your reality or something like that. So, right view. The next thing I love about Buddhism is the Buddha talks about thought as like a sense, what's the best way to explain this? Right, like, I can hear the heater in my camper, but I'm not that heater. There's a fly buzzing around, I can hear him, he's not me, though. It's just sensory things coming at me, right? And he talks about how, your sight, your hearing, your touch, your taste, all of that is a sense, and so is your thoughts. And I find that so interesting, to view my thoughts as like a compilation of all the stuff I'm experiencing. And I've been doing this thing recently where I try to like drop in and just feel who I am behind my thoughts, because they're not, it's just a sense, right? And that's been a really interesting thing to do throughout the day. And it's been kind of relieving because I think that I get really trapped in my head a lot of the time. So try it out. View your thoughts as a sense rather than who you are. In all of my spiritual learning, the concept of duality has been present in every bit of it. And it's, yin and yang, good versus evil, feminine, masculine, and it's in Buddhism as well, okay? But for the first time, I feel like I've started to get at, what do you do with that? That's what Buddhism has brought to me. What do you do with that? As the Buddha would say, you cannot have this without having that, right? The concept that, like, you cannot have your blissful state without the suffering. One cannot exist without the other. So I think that what we're getting at here is to use what is your suffering to help inform or help you to live in a more blissful state. Okay, so example, I look at baby pictures of my children and I get sad because they're not babies anymore. Okay? And knowing that there is this level of impermanence to it all, like someday they're going to be old hairy men and they're going to die too, And using that suffering, right, to push me into the moment, like when I have them, like enjoy every bit of it and enjoy them to the most fully I can at the ages they are in that moment. So I guess what I'm doing in some ways is using my suffering to place me more fully in the moment, I guess. I don't know. And I think the part of Buddhism that's been really good for me is like recognizing that perhaps the best place to be is in the middle, right? Not too far in the suffering, not too far in the bliss. Like, you're gonna have both of those, but the best place might just be in the middle, in the now. So, anyways, that's what Buddhism has brought to me.